nikah namas are essentially just contracts, right?
Yeah.
So, and I learned this fairly recently, that it's literally a contract and there are pages that you can fill in yourself for whatever demands you have.
If you have been physically abused by your husband, you are not to give back your haq meher. A khula is a right of a woman. So if she does not have the delegated right of divorce, this is the Islamic way for her to say, I don't want to live with this guy. She doesn't have to give a reason.
Elhaam, do you know what we're talking about today?
We're talking about some very important topics that I think everyone's going to sit up and pay attention to, because it's all about them rights.
Them rights.
The law, them rights. And we have our resident law expert back.
Resident.
Friend of the pod. We finally get to say that.
Welcome back, Zahrah.
So welcome.
Thank you. I'm very honored to be back.
Oh, that's nice to hear. How's your day?
You don't want to know.
I feel like every time you ask a lawyer that question, that's the answer, usually.
Yeah, there's a lot of... It was fine. Don't ask me a rude question like that again.
Ask me about my Sunday. That was good.
Sunday was good to hear it. I had a great Sunday too. You?
Yeah.
All right, good. Top of the
Relatively
line Sundays
good.
all around. So we wanted you back because talking about women and their rights and knowing them, hot topic in our land in Pakistan. However, so necessary. As Elhaam said at the top of the episode, it is like critical, crucial, and so we're gonna get right into it. We brought you here today to talk about the rights in marriage, a woman's rights in divorce, a woman's rights when it comes to consent and autonomy and her body, and yeah, all that good stuff. So are we ready?
Yes, we are.
Let's go.
Okay, so when a woman gets married, the first thing that one needs to think about is what goes in your nikah nama. And that, unfortunately, whether it is someone from an affluent family, someone from a lesser fortunate family, no one thinks about it.
I mean, nikah namas are essentially just contracts, right?
Yeah.
So, and I learned this fairly recently, that it's literally a contract and there are pages that you can fill in yourself for whatever demands you have.
And the fun bit is that you can actually add anything you want in it. And as long as both you and your husband to be sign it, and there are two witnesses, it is valid in a court of law.
I wish I'd learned it a lot earlier, but when I learned it, I was like, oh, no way. And a lot of women out there don't actually know this. They just sign on the dotted line when it's happening, but they don't actually read through it beforehand.
Not at all.
Yep.
And I'll give you an example. So I've had recently I had a client, and it was very interesting because she was somebody who she used to work for a friend's in a friend's house and do some cleaning. When she got married, spoke to her husband and said, I want a room. So literally in Urdu it was mujhe ek kamra chahiye, and in her nikah nama it said that she will get a room no matter what happens, whether they are divorced, whether things go south, and we filed in court. Apart from getting her maintenance or whatever it was, we got her a room in the house that the husband lives in with his family, and she's living in that room now.
God, I hope she's safe.
I mean, that is so he
Yeah,
wasn't
but
going to buy
but
it.
still,
A contract is a contract,
Yeah,
right?
contract
So
is a
by
contract.
law.
So, it sounds like a very basic thing, but for her, that was her necessity because she didn't make enough money to be able to fend for herself and to get like a place to live in.
did they try to fight it?
Of course.
Yeah.
So they came to court, and then we had to prove that because it was part of the marriage contract, the nikah nama, she was entitled to it.
Tell me something. So nikah nama, this whole contract thing, it's Sharia law, right? Essentially, it's within the realm of our
Yes.
Sharia rules
Islamic
and-
laws.
Yeah, Islamic
Yeah.
laws. So it's existed since then. So we've had all of these rights since then.
Yes.
It's society that kind of just doesn't educate the women about it.
So I'll tell you, nowadays, because there is awareness, it's a great thing because then women know their rights. Not even a few years ago, maybe, last year, for example, I had a lot of clients who came up to me and said, our parents said, here's a nikah nama, sign on the dotted line on the day when the wedding was taking place, and that is it.
Yeah.
So nobody's read it, nobody knows what's in it. And it's so important to know that you can put in, for example, the right. A lot of women don't have the right of divorce.
Yep.
I was just going to say.
And so the right of divorce, and if this may sound like a bit of a school professor, but I mean, let me bear with me.
Honestly, I cannot even, you know more than us how critical it is
Yeah.
for you to explain it.
So, you have the right of divorce is given under Sharia law to a man, right? But he can delegate his right of divorce in a nikah-nama. So the column which most of the the religious scholars or the Maulvi, as we call them in Urdu, cancel out, or most of the parents cancel out of the bride, is the delegated right. So why is it easy? And it's because of the fact that if you do not have that right, a girl has to file for khula. And if she files for khula, she has to go to court, incur costs, and the time period it takes for her to get khula is much longer. Whereas in divorce, it's a divorce deed drawn up by a lawyer, and then you serve it upon the guy or your ex-husband to be. Within the 3 months of iddat period, you get your divorce certificate. So a khula case depend on who your lawyer is, but a khula case can take at least a minimum of 3 months, and then you have the 3 months of iddat period before the divorce certificate. Whereas in a divorce deed would take 2 days and then 3 months. So you're saving on 3 or 4 months of your life.
So does it kick in, the khula thing, does it kick in right after the 3-month iddat period?
So what happens is I'll go
Or
into
it's just
that.
6 months?
So what happens is that when you are filing for khula, that means you don't have the delegated right of divorce. You file in court, and then there's a notice period, etc. So the other side gets notice. A khula is a right of a woman. So if she does not have the delegated right of divorce, this is the Islamic way for her to say, I don't want to live with this guy. She doesn't have to give a reason. She doesn't have to say that he may. A lot of people do give reasons in khula cases because a lot of them have children. So if you don't continue a story the way you want to once you file, it could later affect your custody case. Then you can just say that I don't want to live with my husband. Islamically, legally, you are bound to get khula. Or your guardianship case, etc.,
Right.
which is all child related. But if it is, for example, you have no offspring, now why is there a delay in khula cases? Because sometimes the other side takes longer to reply. Sometimes the judges are not convinced that you can continue without the other party responding. So you can actually get an ex parte khula judgment. So this is for those whose lawyers are maybe not telling the right thing. You can say if after 1 month or a month and a half, the other party is not turning up to court, you can actually get an ex parte khula judgment against your existing husband.
I have 2 questions. So, first of all, that's great. Good for you all to know. But, in the case of khula, that means that you forego your haq meher?
So there's a Peshawar High Court judgment which says that if you have been so it doesn't talk about emotional abuse, but I have in recent times used that same judgment for emotional and financial abuse too. If you have been physically abused by your husband, you are not to give back your haq meher.
Love to hear it.
Islamically, yes. If you file for khula, you are supposed to get back your haq meher. Give back your haq meher. But as I said, in these circumstances, and because emotional abuse cannot be quantified, a lot of people are not aware that they can actually mention that in their cases. But as I said, I have used this and it has worked. So it depends on how you argue it.
Is that the reason why they strike the divorce thing? Because they're like, well, then she doesn't have as many rights to take when she leaves?
No, I think they just want to shut it down.
It's a power thing.
It's a power thing.
Okay.
That only he has the right to do it. She doesn't.
And it's shameful if she's even thinking about it.
And also, I think it's just parents thinking this marriage is going to last forever. Because I've had parents of clients and I've said, but why did you do this to your daughter?
Yeah.
And they say, well, marriages are meant to be broken. So it is it's a stigma of society.
It is.
Right? That my daughter, maybe nowadays people are more open to it, but it's always said that my daughter can't be a divorcee.
20 odd years ago, my cousin was having her nikah, just nice little living room shindig. and they just plucked a mulvi from from whatever was closest nearby. And he was like, you have to strike that or I'm not doing this. Yeah. And her husband-to-be was like, okay, get out of the house. Like, okay, someone else step in right now.
No, but the amount of times I have attended nikahs of people, and usually it's the scholar who comes in and says this, and it's usually the families that stand up and say, no, we've decided, we've talked it through. But this is, we're again talking from a place of privilege. The majority out there, because they follow these societal norms, if it's not the family themselves saying it, it's someone else from outside the family who's like, oh, but what have you given? So what baffles me is that there are these girls who are signing contracts. I mean, just signing a contract is a big deal, right? Signing these contracts, signing their life to this other person, and they are not really reading through what they're signing, but third, fourth, fifth parties are reading it and being like, no, strike that off.
Do parents often read it?
Not really.
Mine did. When my sister got married, my parents read it. They sat down with someone to understand it, because again, like every other contract, the jargon, not everyone can understand it. It's technical.
But they smart.
Called somebody in to come and explain each and every line to them. And we went through it as a family. We all sat down. I remember being there and not understanding a word of what was written on those
like,
pages.
That's one too many syllables for me, but we got us.
It is. Have you ever read one?
Yeah, it's tough.
It's complicated.
It is tough language. So you're saying like, because when I'm envisioning a nikah, obviously we don't see what's happening behind the scenes, but like I don't really think parents are reading it either. I think it's just sort of like off the printing press. Let's sign, let's go.
So nowadays, I think parents are more aware.
Yeah.
Girls are more aware. Siblings are also. So I think it's just a family thing now, that how do I protect my daughter or my sister from whatever may happen, or what may go wrong.
Yeah.
And that just comes to the second part of the nikah now. So then, apart from only the delegated right of divorce, because that's what's spoken about the most, you can add in that if, for example, this marriage does not work out, who will get custody of the children? Who will get guardianship? Who's going to maintain the children? How much? So under the law, a father is supposed to maintain his daughter until she gets married, and maintain a son until he is 18 years old. That shows the law, but instead of going to court later because things didn't work out, you can actually add that in your nikah. You can also say that you do not allow your husband to marry again.
But this law where you're supposed to take care of your children in the case of if the two parents split, or whether even if they're together, this is part of law, which isn't really followed.
No, but that's why people file in court. You see, so there is a law, but to implement that law, you will have to file in court because most fathers should take that responsibility anyway. Because if they have an issue with the ex-wife, that doesn't mean that they hate their kids. It's always a battle. Custody cases, maintenance cases, and guardianship cases are 90% ego battles. It's because I don't like my ex-husband, so I think I will say that I want 6 lakhs and I don't want 1 lakh. For example, or I can afford to pay her 10 lakh rupees or 10,000 rupees, but I will pay her 0 because she divorced me, or she took khula from me, or she wants to take care. She's closer to my kids.
She's turned them against me, and it's like they haven't met you in 3 years.
I have heard so many cases like this where the dads just are like, oh no, she takes care of them or whatever. The kids are closer to the mom, so I don't have to look after them. The mom can look after them.
I'll make new kids. I'll get new ones who love me. Literally, this happens.
So so that's and then also we another thing is that we don't have post-divorce alimony or post-divorce laws, right? So to maintain the wives. So if you come back to the whole point of, if a divorce ends, you have 3 months for iddat period in which a lady is supposed to be, or the ex-wife is supposed to be taken care of by the husband, right? And thereafter, there's nothing. There's no concept of post-divorce maintenance. Now, we've tried...
So when you were mentioning maintenance earlier, it only applies to the iddat period?
So for
I
the
didn't know that.
the children, it's 18 and until marriage because
Yeah.
they're the offspring of the. But the ex-wife, technically under the law at the moment, does not have any rights. What we've tried to do is we've written articles, we've done a lot of research. So there is going to. I mean, it's still not hasn't been passed, so I'm not sure if I can speak about it too much. But there is something about matrimonial property rights, but that's only being drafted at the moment for the federal under the federal capital. Whereas I'm trying to do something with the Sindh government and let's see if that happens.
I hope it happens.
So I mean, it's all very baby
Because I
steps
mean,
and early
this
steps.
is something that, like in the West, you see it where post-divorce, you see men constant paying maintenance, not just for the kids but also for the wife, because she is the mother of your children at the end of the day. So you see, there are cases when that happens, but then over here, the man is supposed to maintain that keep maintaining, giving a maintenance fee to the wife for those 3 months of Viddat period.
Yes.
Do they actually do it?
So some do, and many have to be taken to court, and then they have to. The good
Right.
thing about our courts is that if you do it the right way, and you get a decree in which your husband is supposed to maintain you or maintain his children, and he's not paying up, he can actually be his NIC can get blocked. He can be put behind bars.
I was just going to say that, are there tangible ways of punishment
I'll give you
for
an
not adhering?
I'll give you an example. So there was a gentleman who was living in England, and we had his daughter, his adopted daughter's maintenance case in Pakistan, and we'd gotten a hefty sum, and it all had collected because he never came to court, and it had taken him about 5 years to come back to Pakistan, and we found out. So we got him arrested through court and through the proper channels, and he coughed up quite a bit of money because he didn't want to be behind bars.
Yeah, it sucks.
But I'm glad that these laws are actually being put into play, whereas, because the assumption out there is that why should I go through this process? Because what's the point? Because courts take so long, and I don't want to go through the mental and physical pain of going to court and constantly going through this. So the fact that it's actually being put into law and like people are actually being penalized for all of these things, I think it's a great thing.
Yeah,
that you've told us.
I'm not married, which I make clear in almost every episode in case anyone's watching. But like, I would think one of my concerns would be societal bias present in the courtroom, right? So when the law is backing you up, that's pretty awesome. Actually, this is making me think of the next thing. So when we were getting behind the scenes before we sat on the pod, we talked about whether or not we would be bringing up dramas today because they play a huge role in our country's understanding of marriage and marriage laws. I have to ask, when I'm watching my dramas, and so is Elhaam right there with me, and I want to talk about the misuse of the 3 times saying talaq.
Oh my
that
God.
happens in drama serials. Now, someone listening right now might not know what I mean by misuse. Could you talk about that a little bit?
So if we talk purely from a legal perspective, you cannot verbally divorce your wife. Yeah.
But on
So
WhatsApp?
there's been WhatsApp, there's been
Voice note?
Yeah. So that happens, but there is no such thing as oral talaq under the law. Yes, in Sharia, because we did recently we had like a program and an interaction with religious scholars, and they said that technically that also under our religion it says that you can, but if we just talk purely on a legal basis, because that's what I tend to, of course, lean towards, is that you have to have it written down, and you need to serve it upon your wife via the right means, which is a divorce deed. So unless you do that,
So you have to go through a lawyer, you have to go through that whole legal process of, if, for example, tomorrow I want to divorce someone, I will go to my lawyer, I will tell them to drop the legal divorce notice, and then they will serve it. Right? That's the process.
And often I wonder why dramas are actually not taken more to task for that, because I mean, you're not supposed to mess with something that we have the laws to prove that's not the way it is.
Can we just take a moment? Can you repeat that, please, for everyone listening? That the fact that the man in a drama is yelling those 3 words at you does not mean that automatically the next day you go home to your parents and it's done.
Yeah.
So there are clients who say that their husbands have sent them divorces on WhatsApp. just saying I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you, right? Or saying it, or the same thing in Urdu.
Talaq,
Which
talaq,
sounds,
talaq.
which even sounds
We can say it.
right?
We can say it. We won't get divorced.
We don't get
We can totally say it out loud.
I'm just saying, it just
WhatsApp?
Yes. So what happens is, so this is not khula. This is
Yeah,
only
yeah,
divorce.
yeah.
There can be two types of divorce. One is a mubarat, which is a mutual divorce.
Damn, yeah, I was gonna say that sounds very pleasant.
Yeah. And that is when, which sometimes happens. You can write about all your children and your, your custodial rights, etc. But that doesn't really play out that way, because that's a separate agreement, a child settlement agreement. Here you can just say that, we have mutually decided to divorce each other, and, just a few things that we will not defame each other, etc. Whereas that's one way of doing it. You go to a lawyer, they draw it up for you, they serve it upon the woman, because usually that's what happens. And then once she receives it, it is then taken to the Union Council. They have a fee for it. 3 months down, you have a divorce certificate, and you both can get one. If, for example, it is a unilateral divorce, which is that it's not mubarak, then the man or woman, so usually the men, but a woman, if she has that delegated right, will serve the divorce sheet upon her husband, and then the same process happens again.
Right.
3 months down, you get the divorce certificate.
And in the case of a khula,
so the woman files, the
Yeah.
man cannot file for khula.
right, and it's the same process. She goes through a lawyer.
Goes to a lawyer, file in court. So khula is only through court. There's no notice for khula, as people say. The notice is after you file in court.
Right.
And then it is a process of, so then if I just quickly take you through the process.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, so you file it. Notices are sent to the other side. After they come in, either they come in or they don't come in. So it's ex parte or within the other side. They're given a date or two to file the response, because everybody has a right to reply. Then the judge calls both parties only in, so no lawyers are allowed, for a pre-trial session in which they ask, why do you want khula? Do you want khula? Can you settle things such as kids
Right.
or maintenance or iddat period, etc. And they agree or they don't. The khula is granted in any way, and that is that. But if, for example, the maintenance is not decided there, and this also depends on, sometimes even if a client comes to me and says, I want to file for khula, I always ask her 3 things. I say, firstly, do you have any kids, right? Then, from how long has it been that you have been separated from your husband? Because if a woman is in the nikah of a man and is not living with that man, until such time that she files for khula, gets the divorce certificate, which is after 3 months iddat, she can get past maintenance. Right?
Oh.
So I always ask that, because then I can put that in the khula application.
But are other lawyers asking that too?
I don't know. I mean, that's where I say I'm the best. No, I'm not. But I'm just saying,
No,
I
but
mean,
like this is something that the girls should also know,
Yeah.
so that they make sure that they ask their lawyer that, why haven't you asked me this question?
Yeah.
But no, it's important, right?
Yeah.
Because, I also have some clients who come in and say, well, I don't want to get into that bit, just get me khula. But, I always say, it's your right. It's your haq, even if it is for 3 months. Or if it's for
Absolutely.
6 months. I mean, there are people who've been separated for 2 years.
Yeah.
Right? Why should they not be maintained by their ex? Well, then husbands and then ex. Because it's the law says it, Islam says it, then what's the issue?
Is there a particular, when you say maintenance, is there a specific amount, or is it in the contract?
No. So the haq meher, of course, is in the contract.
Right.
You can add things in, which if we'll go down the nikah nama. So we've only spoken about 3 aspects of it. But so if you file in court for maintenance, you have to give in a lot of your bills, your grocery receipts, etc. So it is tedious, but your monthly expenditure is what you ask for, and it also depends on what your husband earns, right? Or what the father of your children earns. So whatever his salary is, it is then sort of, not a percentage, but that's how it is sort of determined.
Yeah, because I was going to say, when you first get married, you might be both starting out in your careers. I mean, assuming she's allowed to have a career. And I would wonder that it's probably smarter to put in percentage type things as opposed to a number, because you never know what's coming.
Well, for haq meher, it's
haq
usually
meher is a number, yeah.
And you can put in percentages,
Yeah.
or you can say, as in, so I had another client in which she addended a whole contract. right? So there was the nikahnaama and then another contract in which it said that you will, if upon pronouncing divorce, you will give me a house in this area of so much square foot yards or whatever it may be, or equivalent to the market value of a house of that sort.
Good on her.
Right? So she thought it through, and it helped her.
The reason that we are reacting like good is because so often, not only does our culture rip away the right, I should say society, culture, both, rip away the comfort of, hey, you have these rights. Because as you were saying, these are Islamic rights. These are rights that are given to us in a religion that was designed to make sure that human rights were built in for everybody. And so my point I'm trying to make is like the reason that I'm like good she asked for a house is because this is the same society and culture that will say the minute you're married, oh, you don't need to work anymore. That means you're no longer earning money. They won't put your name on. You move into your husband's parents' house. They're there. Your children have more of a right to this home. You have none. So like that's why I'm acting in a good way, because I'm like, she's looking out for herself, because she knows that this marriage could end in 1 year or it might end in 50 years. And where am I going to be?
Because I give you another example, and that's why I started writing about and thinking about post-divorce rights or post-divorce maintenance. I had a 40-year-old client who came to me. Her parents had passed away. She got married when she was about 18 or 19. She didn't really study much, wasn't allowed to work, had children, and then children were living their own lives, didn't really care that much. And her husband chose to cheat on her. She found out, confronted him, and he divorced her and kicked her out overnight. She was living in a old, not an old people's home, but a women's orphanage, if you want to call it that. That's not the right word.
Women's shelter.
Women's shelter.
Thank you. So she was taken. She had to go and stay there because there was nowhere for her to live. And for her to get back on her feet would have taken her at least 6 months.
Right.
She had no siblings. She had no parents. And her kids could not take care of her. Husband refused to take care of her. Who was going to help her? If she would have gotten even 4 or 5 months of post-divorce maintenance, if one could have argued that for her, and it would have been the law, because it's not the law at the moment, she would have had enough money to stand on her feet.
Yeah.
And that got me thinking. That was the main reason why I said, this needs to come through. And I mean, it hasn't yet, but let's see.
So sorry, just to be clear on this, because we brought this up when I was talking about the how much just saying talaq actually enough. And so just to clarify it, so this guy kind of did the same thing where he said it and he was like, get out of here. But that it's not actually legal.
It's not.
So again, it's not legal to do it that way.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to me that they don't get more pushback.
It's a
that.
fictional world, guys.
Yeah.
It's not. They.
What?
They. That said, what else is missing from the nikahnaama that we might not know about?
So we spoke. So another aspect is that you can write about second marriage. A lady can give her consent in the nikahnaama or not give her consent for her husband to marry again.
This is why they don't want us reading the nikahnaama. It's like right there. That's the number one reason. They're like, get these ladies out of the books.
Because even if it says from the nikahnaama, a wife has to give written consent to the union council for her husband to get married again.
That's in every nikah.
It's people cross it out, but it is there. And in fact, if not, there are penal consequences. He can go to jail.
Yeah.
So, it is that intense, but unfortunately, people don't know their rights. Women don't know their rights.
Women don't know their rights.
And that benefits who, I wonder, when women do not know their rights.
Idea.
Recently, I heard that you can actually edit your nikahnaama later, after you've been married, after it's been done. Is that true?
There are two schools of thoughts on that.
Yeah.
The union council has to approve, the chairman has to approve. There are times when, and the union council laws, by the way, are very silent on a lot of these things. So it's either the law which comes from the Muslim Family Ordinance or it comes from Sharia, and the Muslim Family Ordinance also incorporates Sharia. But the union council rules are silent on a lot of things. So technically you can say, yes, you can edit it, but can it be upheld in a court of law? Gray area.
Okay, speaking of rights, we're going to get into a little bit of a more intense topic right now. I just want to give our viewers a heads up that we are going to be talking about sexual rights, consent, and marital rape, and things like that, and sex in a marriage, essentially. Again, something on dramas, which kind of irks me. I'm going to be just real fast about this, that it really bothers me on dramas, which Elhaam has now clarified are not real, that when a couple absolutely hates each other, or when they...
It's not real, but it's a reflection of what's coming from society.
Yeah, I was specifically watching
That's why people like our drama so much, because they can relate
Look at this mirror.
Yeah.
But I was watching a drama. I say there's a few moments that really kind of like made me the radical feminist that I am today. Both of them were drama related. And the second one was I was watching a drama where literally the plot was that this woman was terrified of this man. He basically tricked her into marriage, as they do. And he was awful, cruel, violent, abusive, terrible to her. And then when finally, I guess he was like, get out of my house, I'm going to divorce you. She was like, I'm pregnant. Now, you heard my blood move through my veins the way it was so silent. And I turned and looked at my mom and I was like, what the hell are we watching here? Because there is no way I'm accepting that this was consensual. So let's get into it.
So marital rape, unfortunately, is not spoken about in our dramas enough. And as you said, and I have a really big problem with that, because I just feel that if you show something, it's not about glorifying it. If you show people that this is wrong, it will help women, especially women, know their rights. Because marital rape is a problem, and it is something which is a problem not spoken about enough. And I'm glad you've brought this up, because it's something that, as I said, should be shown in dramas. It is very much there. There is a law of rape, and then we talk about consent, right? So recently there was a judgment, which was, of course, another issue that we face is that most of the criminal judgments, unless they're taken up to the high court, they're not reported.
Yeah.
So if I win something in the lower courts, if I talk about it, or if I talk to somebody about it who would then publish it, it would become widespread news, public knowledge. Otherwise, it would not be a reported judgment as per the law.
Is there any legal reason for that, or it's just the way
it's a
the
lower
news
court.
works?
So it goes to the high court. So if it goes to the high court, then and it is reported there, or if a judgment comes there, or it's upheld.
So there's not like suppression taking place.
No.
Okay.
It's just it is the way it's the law of the land. But recently there was a judgment. It was not. It got blown out of proportions, because it said it was against. It was about consent and marital rape. It was more about consent, not marital rape, because that's not in the law so much, but it is about consent. So a woman's consent for force anyone to touch her body. And that was used in the realm of marital rape, and it became a very well-known and widespread judgment, which was great. So is there a law? Not particularly. Can you tweak the law, and can you use it to fight for someone who's gone through marital rape? Yes.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
So that's one way of it.
It's so crucial, because I believe I know what this is about, or there was at least a story about this in courts that it made it to the Instagram news blast. The comments were so upsetting, and I'm talking like, look, the social media, you only can believe what you see, right? But like, it looked majority to be young men, teenagers, 20-year-olds laughing and being like, then what's the point? And I've actually tweeted back and before Twitter was taken away so much about marital rape, and 90% of the comments said, well, then what's the point of marriage? And I said, if that's your mentality, you need to not be getting married, my guy. Like that's a red flag right there. It got so bad to the point that I started telling people, you know what? It's actually good they're tweeting all of this, because at least there'll be a digital trail that you can trace back to someone and their mentality.
Because it's unheard of in society.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Consent in a marriage? Why?
Why?
What's
and
the
also
reason?
sexual rights, taboo topic. Nobody talks about it. Nobody actually even sits you down and explains to you. When these young girls get married, they're just married off and sent off. No one's actually having these conversations with them. So most of them go through life thinking it's normal, not even thinking that there's something wrong that's happening to them. So it's really sad.
Sex ed literally starts at marriage. And it's the person that you are now married to who's supposed to be telling you things.
And I always say this to a lot of my clients, or people who I know who are about to get married, that they should go into therapy before getting married and go into therapy before having kids.
Yeah.
If they do these two things, I can't predict that their marriage will last, but it will still be a healthier marriage, it'll be a healthier relationship, and they will know exactly what the other person wants out of that marriage.
Tell me something, is there any kind of like rights that have been written out in Islamic law around this?
There are quite a few scholars, there are quite a few organizations who've found out that even there are some verses of the Quran which talks about alimony. So I'm sure there is something.
Right.
But it's not, out there. It's not as maybe open as the pillars.
Yeah. But I would just hope that, be kind. It's your partner. They're married to you. That's a really valid point. I also think I know this is going to be shocking coming from me, but so often men also, we are not a society and a culture which is widespread on dating and love marriage. If anything, we're boo, get that out of here. We don't like that. They also don't really know that much. We all are just kind of
winging it.
And this is just what we expect. And this is what we've been told. And just the temperature is oh my God, now I get to hang out with this person all the time and no one's going to yell at me and I'm not breaking any rules. But then you don't know how to behave.
Exactly. And it's not only in an arranged marriage.
No.
It's also in a love marriage.
Of course,
sure. Because you've
absolutely.
never lived with the other person.
Yeah.
Our society, our norms, our religion, whatever it may be, does not allow that to happen. So when you may like somebody, you may be fond of that person, but when it comes to living day-to-day life with anyone, it's very hard.
Yeah.
And if you do not maybe have a few therapy sessions or whatever it may be, before entering that, how do you manage? It'll take you much longer to understand that person, what they want out of this, and maybe this therapy will actually help you decide not to get married.
I also think Elhaam brought up a really good point when she said, the topic of sexual rights, or sexual anything, even me saying it right now, I'm telling you, I'm feeling God, I'm saying the S word. My parents are going to watch this. I'm an old woman and I'm mute it, and it's because it's such a taboo, even if it's the detriment of safety, of knowledge, of anything. We're no.
And we keep saying this. We talk about it here because it's not being talked enough out there.
Yeah.
It's out there that we need to be... There needs to be conversation around these topics. Otherwise, there's a reason why we're flagging them as things that are going wrong in society because no one's talking about them. No one's openly discussing it or even educating people about it.
So how we spoke last time about, the earlier program, and we spoke about inheritance and we spoke about awareness and how it's being spread by different, societies and different organizations to the rural areas. But imagine going in with a pamphlet or a leaflet talking about consent or sexual rights or marital rape.
They chase you out of there like a witch in Salem.
They won't allow you to even meet the women.
Yeah.
Forget, enter the village, if you want to call it.
Yeah.
So, one really needs to know how to do it. And there was a certain theatre group. They tried to not maybe talk about marital rape so much, but they did try and, enact a few and go towards the sexual side, that what is right and what is wrong. And they had to leave. There was a riot against them.
There's also people trying to explain to little kids about good touch, bad touch. Yeah. But even that, it's a very, very tiny part of the population that's educated enough to even have those conversations.
Yeah.
Forget having these conversations. If you can't have them with kids, even adults aren't having them.
Yeah.
So that's a gray area.
Okay.
There are rights, consent of a woman, it's there.
Yeah.
Particularly regarding, sexual rights.
Yeah.
maybe not so much. But again, a religious scholar could, guide you better in that. But to my knowledge and to whatever I have read up on,
Right.
It is a gray area.
Okay.
As I said, even alimony is a gray area, for example.
Right,
So
right.
we've done a lot of I've done research there, so I can't talk about that. And even in that,
There in your, and really I think one of the things that's heartbreaking to me is like our whole lives we are told, and I'm saying we also, believe it or not, I can speak with this accent and also be told I'm not allowed to date. They seem to not believe me when I say that on the internet. But we're always told like, no dating, no boys, nothing, da 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 da. Then you're married to like a virtual stranger and you're putting the safety in their hands, right? And something about that, like, it has really broken my heart when I've seen it happen over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, women are not objects. Like, we are not something that's just been moved ek ghar se dusre ghar tak. Like, we are humans and people. And like, actually, when the language around marriage, like in the majority faith of this country and even just culture, is supposed to be like beautiful and loving, and you're building a new family together, and like it's a whole thing. But then what it's turned into, and I'm not saying it's the majority, I wouldn't know that. You're a lawyer, you probably know more of what you see every day than I know. I'm not gonna Sabah explain to you your own life, but like, it's just too many bad stories for this to not be considered. Like, I really do consider the way we do marriage as part of why femicide is so huge in Pakistan, because we don't talk about brides and women and as people. It's like, here's a thing that's coming your way.
Are there any, say, conferences or like you're saying, leaflets, this, that, telling women about their rights out there right now? Are there any organizations working towards it?
so there are quite a few organizations talking about nikah and marital
Yes,
rights. Like
that's
that.
something that's recently also
Yes.
been very popular,
Yes.
and I'm glad to see that mainstream. Like, I'm glad to see like all these clients. We've had clients who've come to us and they're like, we're pushing for this campaign or whatnot. So I'm glad to see that the mainstream is now slightly leaning towards adopting, educating women about their rights.
No, absolutely.
With regards to nikah.
Absolutely, and I think even shows like this, because you'll be surprised that it's not only the uneducated class who don't know about their rights, it's also the educated class.
Yes.
100%.
No one
Absolutely.
knows.
Yeah.
I mean, not no one, but mostly they don't know.
I mean, every rung of society benefits from the ignorance of the people, right? Like, in some way or form. And again, I will include men in this. Like, lots of men in Pakistan are in forced marriages. Like, let's not pretend that's not the reality. It's true. They don't really have a say either. And they don't know that they don't have to do that. I actually read this Reddit. I'm very new to Reddit because I'm a dinosaur who's just learned what the cool kids were doing 55 years ago. There's one on Muslim marriage, and I do read it. Like, I don't know why, like self-pain or whatever. And always it is the South Asians who are like, my parents are making me do this and I don't know what to do. Can someone give me like something from our faith that I can use as an argument back against them? And I'm like, that is just nuts, because they truly use your ignorance against you in this.
No, absolutely. There are a lot of men as well who've been victims of domestic violence, who are victims. And it's not only, I mean, marriage is for two people. And
Yes.
either one of them, it could be wrong,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't only have to be the man. Yes, in marital rape, etc., it is usually the men who are at fault. But yeah, there are many men who've also, and they also get emotionally abused. So so not taking away from them.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the women,
It's
as
the
we discussed,
majority,
the majority is women, and a lot of financial abuse and emotional abuse. So
Yeah.
it's what can't be seen is harder to prove, and the men in our country have really mastered that art.
Me growling at them through the camera screen. Yeah.
Because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
if you emotionally abuse somebody, you cannot prove it,
Yeah.
or you can prove it very unless it's in WhatsApp messages or
Yeah.
Actually, yesterday we had another friend of the pod, a therapist, on the show, and we were talking about the popularization of the word gaslighting and how the reason that therapists were taking it out into the world was because people didn't know that this was a covert form of abuse, because it's so hard to prove someone's making you crazy. Everyone's just going to look at you and be like, why are you so crazy? Calm down. And that is what emotional and financial abuse do too.
What advice would you give young kids out there getting married, signing their nikah namas, and then slightly older kids who realized they don't want to do this anymore and going their separate ways? What advice would you give them as a lawyer? Like, we've already gone through a bunch, so I won't make you repeat that, but any other advice for them?
So
Since they're listening, we're hoping.
So go into therapy before marriage. When you read your nikah, know your rights, know exactly what you want out of a marriage. That would be for the younger kids. And also, people in marriages or about to enter marriages, always, especially for the women, be financially secure. Even if you're a teacher, even if you're just baking goods at home, you don't have to do hi-fi jobs. You need to just be earning an income so that no man can tell you what to do because he's controlling you through money. That is so important.
Absolutely.
And as far as those who are married, and either work on your marriages, be mindful, and if not, then know that you have a way out, whether you're a man or a woman. Both.
One last thing. Recently, and I can't believe that came to me right now after we've had our entire Nikah conversation, but okay. So for all of those people who, because I heard it through word of mouth and whatnot, and I was actually shocked because I thought it was once it's done, it's done. And then my next question was that if you do edit it, what's the process? Is it like you're going right back to the start and then doing it again?
That's why it's a gray area, because it's something that is not, there's no rules about it. The law doesn't describe it, and technically it can't be done. Mm-hmm. Some people try.
Okay, so kids, make sure that you read it properly the first time around.
Yeah. Actually, last of them to finish, because I just want to know, how would someone watching this find a lawyer like you or someone who they can talk to? Because you're giving solid advice, and I think we are not giving any advice. You're giving solid advice, but I just don't want them to be like, where do we go from here? You know, so maybe with just that.
I mean that I could just give my website now.
Do it.
That would just be like advertising.
Yeah.
And so I always feel that when a client comes to you, they can just Google lawyer, family lawyer. There's Vakil online, which sort of helps direct you to a lawyer, depending on how much you can afford and what you can do. But I always say, even if a consult costs you something, go and consult with your lawyer. See if you click. If you think your lawyer understands you, only then go ahead with them. That's very important, because there will be issues later, and you don't want that.
Lovely.
Zahrah, thank you so much for coming back. We really appreciate it. This was a very important conversation. I know I'm sweating bullets having this conversation.
Once again, you've taught us so much.
Yeah, and we will have you back, friend of the pod. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.